Hello everyone, intuitive and astrologer Lisa Salvatore here with an update on the astrology and the energies of the upcoming election, significant dates prior and significant dates thereafter. Before we get right to the astrology, I do have some messages that I feel are extremely important for the collective, so I highly encourage you to listen to this first before moving on to the astrology. First and foremost, welcome. If you are new to my channel, welcome to all of my new subscribers. It is lovely to have you here. And as always, to my existing subscribers, it is lovely to have you back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your love and support. Back in July, early July, I recorded a couple of different videos. One was on the Mars-Uranus conjunction that deeply affected both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This was before Joe Biden stepped down. So I have a reading based upon that time period, but it does go into a lot of predictive energies that are still unfolding right now. Same thing with the video that I did for both Donald Trump and then a separate video for Kamala Harris. So I highly suggest that you go back and listen to those because those are going to have more of that predictive element. I intend to stick to the events right now as opposed to the candidates. Of course, I'm going to touch on their personal astrology and what's going on for them because I have to. And we're also going to look back a little bit in order to move forward. But overall, I am focusing on the events here. I'm focusing on the collective energy. This right here, this quote encapsulates the energy of November and moving forward perfectly. Fear knocked at the door. Faith answered. There was no one there. Faith over fear is the theme. We want to be more in the vibration of faith than we are over fear. The vibration of fear on this planet is very strong right now, and I do not want to feed that fear. I intend to help to lift humanity, but I also give the truth. Having said that, faith over fear is a huge theme right now. One of the strongest reasons that I am more focused on actual events and the overall energy of these events is because whomever wins this election is leading our country through some extremely turbulent and unpredictable and unprecedented times. There is no knight in shining armor. There is no savior coming in on a white horse. These leaders are people just like us. And as Pluto moves into Aquarius on November 19th for good until 2043, 2044, Pluto is leaving Capricorn and moving into the sign of Aquarius. The sign of Aquarius is the sign of the people. It is the sign of humanity. It is a sign of pouring back into the collective consciousness. It is all about the people coming together. Aquarius is a sign of revolution. It's a sign of the individual, and it's a sign of freedom and truth. So whoever is leading our country through these times, we have to remember faith over fear. We have to try to remember to love one another, to love fellow man. That is the theme. That is the energy of Pluto and Aquarius. It's about coming together to create the new. And we cannot do that if we are all divided. The last thing I intend to do is fearmonger, but the truth of the matter is that the upcoming astrology for the next few years is quite challenging, has the potential to be quite challenging and disruptive. This is the thing about astrology that we always want to remember. Astrology is not responsible. The planets are not responsible for what we do. They do not dictate how we behave. But the sky does act merely as a mirror for what happens down here on the world stage, and we can see its influence and the way that it plays out in the everyday reality. That goes for not just the collective, but also obviously personally. Having said that, it is also about potential, it's about probability, and it's about possibility with some predictability, okay? So we want to always leave a little bit of wiggle room and always have hope for the highest vibration and the highest expression of these planetary energies. And we hear all the time that history repeats itself, but I always try and reframe that to history mimics itself because we have the power to rewrite history. And that again is what Pluto in Aquarius is all about. We are rewriting history. It's not just Pluto in Aquarius though. In 2025, the planet Uranus is going to enter the sign of Gemini. It's going to dip into Gemini. It will then retrograde back into Taurus. It will officially enter Gemini in 2025. When Uranus enters Gemini, we are set to experience the Uranus return of the United States. Here is the Sibley chart, which is the birth chart for the United States of America, July 4th, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia. In the Sibley chart, Uranus is at 8 degrees of Gemini. On July 7th of 2025, Uranus enters 0 degrees of Gemini. Oops, sorry, I thought I was showing you the chart there. So here's Uranus at 8 degrees 55 minutes of Gemini. So Uranus is here at 0 degrees of Gemini. It enters on July 7th. And one of the reasons why a lot of people in general, including astrologers, talk about this being significant, well, there's many reasons, but Uranus in Gemini in the past, now remember, Uranus has an 84-year orbit. For frame of reference, the last time that Uranus was in Gemini was from 1941 to 1949. Now, all of the Uranus transits past have coincided with some very significant times of war. First, it was the American Revolution, then it was the Civil War, and then World War II. So there's a lot of speculation as to what can come under this next transit of Uranus in Gemini and what that means for the United States, especially as tensions mount with Russia and China. But again, taking out the fear component, we, the people, okay, remember that, Pluto in Aquarius. Here's Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius at the same time that Uranus enters Gemini. And this is in a trine aspect. So the outer planets are switching signs and actually beginning to harmonize. So this could potentially mitigate or offset some of that very pronounced speculatory energy of that history is going to repeat itself, okay? So don't go straight to the fear. Uranus is also about change and freedom and raw truth and revolution, and so is the sign of Aquarius. Standing up for what's right, standing up for the beliefs of the people, of the group, of the collective. We want to keep that in mind as the underlying theme. We also have Neptune here at this point. Neptune has now entered Aries. In 2025, Neptune will enter Aries. This is extremely significant because Neptune has been in the sign of Pisces since 2011. So now we have the 3 outer planets switching signs in 2025. Even more significantly, they are moving into the earlier degrees of signs that harmonize with each other. So this is energy, those outer planets that operate at a much more deeper spiritual level of consciousness and span over a longer period of time and truly color the energy and everything that is going on. These 3 planets are beginning to move into harmony. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy by any stretch of that word. Regardless of what happens with this election, this is the energy. And that is why I wanted to pull focus onto this. We are not going to really see times get easier until probably after 2028. I've been saying this for a long time, as have all of the astrologers. We are in a time period where we are rewriting history. The old is coming down to bring forth the new. And that is not to minimize the chaos and disruption that is going on all over the country. Today that I am recording this video, it is October 22nd. And we can see Mars, the planet of action and energy and force. And Mars is also known as the god of war, the fighter. He goes to battle, metaphorically speaking and physically speaking. Mars is here at 25 degrees of Cancer. And Mars entered Cancer back on September 4th. Now, Mars will be in Cancer for an extended period of time because we're also going to have a Mars retrograde this year into 2025. Mars retrogrades occur once every 24 to 26 months. And as we move throughout the end of the month, we see that Mars moves closer and closer into an exact opposition with Pluto. And Pluto is at that 29th degree of Capricorn. Secrets being exposed. Look at everything going on with Diddy, all that information that's coming out. So Mars in Cancer, let's think about what the sign of Cancer represents for a moment. Cancer is all about our people. It is what we protect. It is our people and it is our place in the world. Cancer is also the sign of patriotism. Remember, when the United States was formed, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, the sun was in Cancer. It was 4th of July. So Mars now, the fighter spirit, is in the sign of patriotism. And Mars in Cancer is overall moody because Cancer, the sign, is ruled by the moon. And the moon ebbs and flows. And in mundane astrology, the moon also rules over the people. So the people are frustrated. Everything is frustrated right now, cranky. You might even find that you've been more crankier than normal. We all are. We're all there. And interestingly enough, you might or might not know this, but I was reading that on the day that P. Diddy was arrested, there was actually something that was passed for 23andMe. And I believe 20-something board members quit because of something having to do with upcoming policies to DNA analysis or what they're going to be doing with the DNA. And I find that really interesting because Mars had entered Cancer at that point and is going to station retrograde through Cancer. So this could give us another clue as to what we could be hearing more about. Remember, Cancer is also the sign of our ancestry, our lineage, our roots, our family, DNA. So again, that just connects and tracks with these energies. And then Pluto at the 29th degree is digging things up, and there's a lot of exposure that's occurring out on the world stage. Now, I expect that will intensify over the next couple of weeks, especially when we get towards the end of this month, because you see here that Mars, as we get to the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, 31st, November 1st, the heat is really on. Mars gets to that critical 29th degree of Cancer. That's the crisis degree. And Pluto is directly opposite, already hanging out at that 29th crisis anaretic degree in Capricorn. And these two are in exact opposition to each other. We're also going to have a very powerful new moon in Scorpio on November 1st. And the rulers of Scorpio are both Mars and Pluto. Very significant. I will have my other reading for the Scorpio new moon coming out shortly. But this Mars-Pluto opposition, the heat is on already, but even that much more pronounced November 1st through November 3rd, when Mars is at that 29th degree. When we get to November 4th, Mars will move into Leo. And in Leo, Mars is ready for action, right? Leo's fire, pure energy. Leo's ruled by the sun and wants to be seen. Mars wants to take action and move forward. And coincidentally, this is November 4th, one day before the alleged election. This leads me to my next point, to take it back to the election. I mentioned this before, and I'm going to say it again. I still do not see the election happening the way we have known it to happen. We already see with all of the destruction that we've had between Hurricane Helene, there's so much flooding going on right now across the world. France, Poland, parts of Italy, New Mexico, Vancouver. Granted, Vancouver is not the US, but still, this could absolutely impact the voting process, the ballots. I still stand by that there's going to be perhaps another weather event or some kind of major power outage, temporary. It could have to do with the solar storms. We've been having major solar activity, hence the northern lights being seen in areas where it's not typical to see the northern lights. That's from the solar storms. So I just don't see that the voting process, the election process, is going to be the way we've known it to be. In fact, it might even carry over into December. And I will touch on the candidates, but I just want to get through the overall energies here surrounding this election. Now, jumping ahead to November 25th, we are going to have Mercury stationing retrograde. And this Mercury retrograde kind of feels like it's getting drowned out by Mars, but it isn't. It's still very loud. Mercury is already not very comfortable in the sign of Sagittarius. And when Mercury stations retrograde, Mercury is in opposition to Jupiter. Jupiter's also retrograde at this point. So there's a tremendous reevaluation process going on here. There is a lot having to do with delays and blockages, misinformation. I think there's going to be something around miscounting, having to take a step back, and even so in specific areas where things are not going to count and will have to be recounted, or re-voting will have to take place. Don't ask me how, I'm just picking that up intuitively. But this will not go according to plan, this whole election process. It is not going to go according to plan. And I think it is really important for all of us to remember that, personally speaking, these energies can feel like a lot without all of the external chaos that we're dealing with. So you want to make sure you're taking care of your physical body and that you're allowing yourself to slow down and take a break, and to try not to get so enmeshed and emotionally involved in what is going on outside of you. Take care of what you can control, which is inside. Stay close to your people, pull into your spiritual toolbox, the spiritual practices that help to keep you grounded. Get away from the TV, get out into nature, do the things that lift your vibration and that help to bring joy into your life, because at this point, it's going to be chaotic. Tempers are flaring everywhere. Now, Mars is still direct moving through Leo at this point. So Mars is hot. Interestingly enough, on December 5th, we also have what we call the Mercury cazimi. This is the inferior conjunction of Mercury conjunct the sun. There's nothing inferior about this conjunction, though. This is going to be some kind of defining moment, or some significant, very significant information should be coming out in regards to this election, in regards to the voting process, in regards to whatever is occurring at this time. And again, we're dealing with this opposition to Jupiter. So this will be something coming out that will have everybody questioning their own beliefs, their own faiths. What they thought before may not be what they think now. What is coming out that could be changing the minds of the public, of the people, one way or the other. Some sort of information, very prevalent information in regards to this election, some form of secrecy coming to light. This could have something to do with foreign affairs, travel, but whatever it is, there's going to be a reevaluation very strongly at this point. The next day, December 6th, Mars will station retrograde. Mars, the warrior, stations retrograde at 6 degrees and 10 minutes of Leo, while Mercury's retrograde, and while the sun is moving even closer into an opposition with Jupiter. This is hot energy. And even though Mars is at 6 degrees of Leo and Pluto is now at 0 of Aquarius at this point, Mars is now going to backtrack from Leo and get back into Cancer and move again into an exact opposition with Pluto. So we're going to have 3 exact hits of this Mars-Pluto opposition until we get into April of 2025. But this is an energy that is operational for the duration of the next few months. So the tensions will be mounting, and there will be a lot of unpredictable turns of events and starts and stops and reveals of information. It's very unpredictable. We're going to think it's going one way, and then it goes in another way, and then it goes back. It's just going to be wild. And again, you can always go back and watch the other videos because it will all connect. This Mars retrograde is going to be from December 6th all the way through February of 2025, February 23rd or 24th of 2025. And Mars will arrive at its first opposition to Pluto 2 days before the election in the United States. The archetypal energy of both Mars and Pluto and this Mars-Pluto opposition is one of volatility and can be one of violence, eruption, corruption, power dynamics, control, collision, accidents, acts of intimidation, also extreme assertions of power. Everybody wants to assert their power here at this point. Power plays, power moves. So again, hot button energy. And this is just like the appetizer here. All of that to say, the voting process could potentially be tampered with. It will not be straightforward. And there might be attempts to circumvent the process. Now, moving along to Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025, I do not feel that we're even going to have an answer by Inauguration Day. I don't think we're going to know who the next president of the United States is by Inauguration Day. Now, I enlisted the assistance of a good friend who actually is very much into politics. I am not. I've already expressed that. She had said to me, "What do you see happening with this election?" I was giving her my thoughts, and I said to her, "Could you please explain to me how it could be possible that we would not know who the president is by Inauguration Day? Is that possible?" And she said, "Well, yes, because think about what happened with Al Gore." And then it clicked. That could be a mimicking type of a situation, not exactly the same, but of what happened with Al Gore and the presidency. We may see something mimicking that as we get towards Inauguration Day. I just don't think we're going to have an answer by then. I really don't. In fact, I would even venture to argue that we won't really know, or it will not really be moving forward until the end of February when Mars stations direct. Now I'm going to touch on the candidates real quick. Back on September 17th, we had a lunar eclipse in Pisces, okay? And that lunar eclipse was the first one, again, another appetizer or a preview into the next eclipse cycle, which will begin in January of 2025 when the nodes shift back into Pisces and Virgo. This is where we will start to have the next series, I should say, of eclipses from 2025 through 2027. But the one that we just had on September 17th was the first one, and think of it as a snippet of the theming and the energies. So here's Kamala's birth chart and that eclipse that happened on September 17th. You can see that it's elevated the eclipse. The full moon lunar eclipse happened in her 10th house, which was very public. Okay, that's her career, her status, her reputation. And we can also see that Saturn is retrograde on her Chiron, which could be exposing a pain point of some sort. But it's also important to mention that when we have an eclipse, the activation of that eclipse, we can take that out about 4 weeks prior. And the presidential debate was on September 10th. So at the time of the debate, 1 week prior, this eclipse energy was already in effect. This eclipse took place in Kamala's 10th house, which is very public. So this is giving us an indication that she will definitely be in the public eye, as we would assume, for this next eclipse cycle, regardless of whichever way this election goes. Now, for Donald Trump, this eclipse was in his 8th house, very behind the scenes, could be very draining. We've got Saturn going through his 7th house of others, his relationships, open enemies. Saturn's retrograde here. He does have Jupiter on his north node, Mars in Cancer on his Mercury, heated communication about people and protection. That's what the debate is all about, obviously. Now, a few other things that are really interesting. You can see here in Donald Trump's chart that he actually has Uranus in Gemini. His Uranus is at 17 degrees of Gemini. It's aligned with his North Node at 20 degrees of Gemini. The North Node is the destiny of the soul, the future. And then the Sun at 22 degrees of Gemini. And this is all very public in his 10th house. So at the same time that the United States is going through its Uranus return, Donald Trump is also going through his Uranus return. Now, I'm not saying that means he's going to be the one leading us. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be the one leading us, but what I'm saying is that regardless of where he is at, there is something very powerful here for him, for his public persona, his public image. But again, I don't know what that means. I'm just stating what the planets are doing, and I found that interesting that he's also going through his Uranus return at the same time that the United States is. Now, a few other things that it's important to mention is that this Mars retrograde that we're going to be having will be impacting Donald Trump's chart in a big way because it's going to go from his 12th house to his 1st house. When it enters Leo, it will be in his 11th house, and then it will start to move through Leo, and it'll go into his 12th house of behind the scenes, hidden enemies. It's also known as the house of undoing, but this could also be where we sabotage ourselves. We have to look at all sides. And it moves pretty close to his natal Pluto in the 12th. Again, that's that Mars-Pluto energy. Violence, corruption, eruption, control, heat, accidents. And then it stations retrograde. So it doesn't get quite to Pluto, but it does get close within 4 degrees. And then it will station retrograde. And then it will retrograde back into his 11th house, opposing Pluto exact, and then Mars stations direct at the end of February. Looking at his zodiacal releasings, he is hitting what we call a peak period on April 20th of 2025. And this is a level 1 peak period, which a level 1 peak period is considered a big deal in our astrology. But the thing is, we don't know what type of big deal it is. Is it a positive big deal? Is it a negative big deal? What is happening? This shift does suggest that we are coming upon, or he is coming upon, I should say, one of the more significant chapters of his life. But again, we don't really know what that means, right? We don't know which way that's going to go. Another thing is that the Mars retrograde will also coincide, timing-wise, with everything else going on. It will also coincide with what we call the Mars return, which we all have when Mars comes back to where it was for us at birth. And Donald Trump does have his Mars in Leo. So as Mars starts to move forward in Leo again, that time period coincides with the April 20th peak period that I just mentioned. So he's going to start to go into his Mars return, and this is definitely going to be a time of reassessment for him. And the fact that it's going to move into his 12th house again and align with Pluto, this could emphasize secret plots by him, for him, against him. Now moving to Kamala Harris's zodiacal releasings. Looking back for a moment, Kamala had a peak period, a level 1 peak period, which is very significant, on December 25th, starting December 25th of 2020, which would coincide with the previous election. And that had the Pisces energy here, which is more of like a behind the scenes energy. And that would make sense. Vice president, behind the scenes more so. But it was still a level 1 peak period for her. She also had a level 3 peak period, August 4th of this year. And interestingly enough, that was when we were finding out that she would likely be nominated at the DNC. She'll then enter a level 3 peak period, January 23rd, 2025. Again, just a few days after the inauguration. And that's again the Pisces energy here. But this is what I was really focusing on. April 21st of 2025, which is one day after Donald Trump's peak period begins. She also has what we call a loosing of the bond the same day she goes into her level 3 peak period. Again, this is not good nor bad. I want to stress that. This is just highlighting that these are very significant times for both individuals. And obviously we know that, but their astrology, their planets are showing us this. What the loosing of the bond means is that there's literally a break in the planetary sequence. So there's a peak and then there's a break. We just don't know which way that's going to go. Alrighty, So all of this to say, with everything that's going on, with all of the chaos, with all of the division, love one another, love your people, keep them close. Whatever is going on out there in the world, try not to fund the fight. The next couple of weeks especially will be highly contentious. The energy is going to feel supercharged. We're already feeling it. Seek practical ways to help to quell any anxiety that you might be experiencing. Remember, faith over fear. We have to have faith. We have to trust that we are all here for a reason, for various reasons. We are all here together on this planet right now to make it a better place, to continue to raise humanity. And the big theme of Pluto in Aquarius, I want to stress this, it's a very different energy than Pluto in Capricorn, okay? Pluto in Aquarius is going to be much more focused on freedom, truth, liberation, and future forward movement and momentum. It has this stronger sense of community. But because we're dealing with Pluto, we know we have to strip away the old. The old way has to die before the new way can be reborn, before the new earth can be reborn. And we're all here for it. We are all in it, including those who will potentially be in charge of leading the United States. So I'm going to be doing a live stream, like I mentioned, for November energies. I will talk more about that Mars-Pluto opposition. I will definitely talk more about the Mars retrograde. I will be putting out a reading for the Scorpio new moon. I am also human at the end of the day, and I'm very sensitive, and I work with very many people. So I will try to come on as much as I can, but I have to be in the right mind frame to do so, because it's a lot right now, as you know. And there's a lot to say, there's a lot to cover, but it's really important that we pull into our faith right now. Yes, of course, it's natural to have fear. We all have fear. Fear of the unknown. It's scary. But having those times where we can pull into our faith is so important. To find the silver lining, to practice gratitude. Gratitude is the attitude. I said that on my last week's forecast for the week ahead, which, by the way, if you appreciate this content and you would like to go deeper, please join my community or become a soul scriber. You can find that in the description box below to subscribe to my newsletter. I do a live stream every Sunday where I go over the astrology and the energy for the upcoming week. But it's more than that. It's a community feel, spiritual chit chat. You have the ability to ask questions. I also do some pop-up lives for my members, for my exclusive subscribers. So definitely check that out. I'll also be doing readings through the signs for each month for the subscribers. So I do the general ones here, but I'll be doing more detailed ones for the subscribers. So again, check that out. And you can find all of my information in the description box below or by visiting my website, lisasalvatore.com. I do have a few sessions left for the end of the year. So if you're interested in that, you can find everything right there on my website. Much love to everyone. Stay strong. And remember, we are all in this together, no matter what happens. Take care. Bye.